Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Michele Burklund. I'm the Chief Science Officer here at Puriya, and this is our Living Well series, and I'm so excited. Today we have Dr. Priya Walia, I want to say Puriya and Priya, talking all about Ayurvedic medicine. So I'm so excited to have you today. We have so much to talk about. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes, of course. Hi, it's been so long since we've actually been face-to-face in school. So thank you. And I feel quite honored to be a part of this series and share what I have to say today. So yeah.
Yes, we have a lot to share, and it'll be very educational because I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about what it exactly is too. So before we get started, I'm going to read your background so everybody can become familiar with all of your amazing knowledge and education. And then we'll really get started into the questions.
Great.
So Dr. Priya Walia's journey to becoming a naturopathic doctor and Ayurvedic physician was propelled both by her innate desire to practice medicine at a young age and a life-changing illness that quickly instilled in her that undeniable need to heal fully. Coming from an East Asian background and being taught about Mother Nature's wisdom to heal thyself, she explored where she could best learn healing to employ not only for herself, but for others. She recognized health as being inherent and that appropriate guidance is necessary at times. She completed her undergrad studies in human biology and health psychology at Bastyr University, where she further understood the mind-body-spirit connection. Her thirst for holistic healing and health promotion led her to naturopathy, where she attended her accredited doctorate in naturopathic medicine from Bastyr University. She further followed her passion for connecting to her roots in East Asian medicine, Ayurveda, and pursued an accredited master's in Ayurvedic sciences, also at Bastyr University, becoming a graduate of the very first inaugural class. Through this, she extensively studied in India, while then completed a CNME-approved residency position that allowed her to enhance her knowledge and practical skill set within naturopathic medicine and Ayurveda. Since then, she's gained extensive training in regenerative techniques like trigger point, platelet-rich PRP, platelet-rich plasma, and aesthetic procedures, including microneedling and PRP. But she's combined this 5,000-year-old wisdom of Ayurveda, naturopathic medicine, and other physical medicine modalities such as yoga, meditation, and breathing techniques, IV injection therapies, craniosacral therapy, kinesiotaping, and regenerative therapies to help her patients attain and maintain the health that they are rightfully due. Areas of focus include both optimizing the health and working with chronic disease, such as adjunctive oncology support, autoimmune conditions, digestive concerns, endocrinology, women's health, reproductive health, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dermatology, and aesthetics. When she's not seeing patients, she can be found nerdy out on science advancements, exploring greenery stemming from her love of nature and home state of Washington, reading, writing, playing her violin, watching movies, spending time with family, friends, and traveling. And she also speaks Hindi and Punjabi. That is amazing. So many different things. I feel like we could have 10 different talks on different subjects, for sure. But yeah, you definitely have an extensive knowledge, especially in Ayurveda, and the interesting combination, combining it with naturopathic medicine too, I think is a great fusion. So to get started on the first question, before we go into a lot of the little questions about Ayurveda, I want you to describe what exactly it is to our viewers and what's the underlying philosophy and treatment and herbs that you use. So big question here, but just kind of give us an overview of what it is.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much that I could say to that one question, but just to keep it at a very introductory level, Ayurveda, if we split the word in half to Ayu or Ayur, that word in itself translates to life, and Veda translates to knowledge. So putting those two together, we get something that's known as life knowledge, or in other words, the science of life. And so what that really encompasses is just a way of how one should live in their most healthiest state of being, so that they could live not just on a day-to-day basis, but live it well. And it's, it comes down to the most basic principle of balance, maintaining, where you best are healthy, and making sure that, no matter what you're thrown, what environment you're in, who you're talking to, or what you're being faced with, you're able to maintain that level of balance and health. And so that we say that disease means imbalance. As simple as that. The whole idea then is not just treating the imbalance, but helping to maintain that balance throughout life. So we're maintaining that life force. And I think both naturopathic and Ayurveda are very heavy on that aspect in terms of our vitality. And so we call it our life force, which is prana, and also our internal fire, which is known as Agni. So kind of using those two and maintaining that for each individual, that definitely varies with all of us. We are all very different, but that's kind of the basis. And it's not just a physical science. It translates to mind, body, spirit. So we take a look at all of those as well, as we are not just a physical body. So certain herbs, there's so many that I could list, but one is actually a combination of three. It's called triphala. Try three, phal means fruit. So these in combination work together to balance, and we'll get to it in a bit, I'm sure, all of our doshas, so the three doshas. And it's great for everybody of all of ages, and it has a certain rejuvenative and adaptogenic properties. It's great for certain conditions, but also it's a very, very gentle detoxifier for the system, and great for digestive health overall. Another one is, I'm sure we may have already heard of this one, but this is ashwagandha. I'm sure going through school, naturopathic school, you've heard of, oh, what's a stress herb? I'm stressed out, and what do I take? So that's a go-to. It helps with vitality. It helps with cortisol. Helps with stress. Could help with depression, anxiety. So many different things. And then another one I'll mention, since we're going into the full cold season, is actually the Indian gooseberry. It's also known as amla.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this one is actually one of the most potent forms of vitamin C that we have in the world. And so it's a grapefruit. It's quite sour, but it's great for immune support and antioxidant. It's good for the skin. So it's a good one to have overall. But you also asked about other treatment modalities that we kind of go through within Ayurveda, and it's quite similar to naturopathic medicine in the sense that we take a whole body approach, and we like to look at lifestyle. So if there's an imbalance in somebody's day-to-day routine, or just how they're living life, we'll work on that. Start the basics right there, and then we move to the diet. There's a specific diet for each and every person. I'm not talking about our fad diets out there, but it's more of a diet that is in line with I think we lost each other there.
Oh, yeah, you're back. Okay.
Okay. And so doing those, but then we also have certain Ayurvedic body treatments. There's lots of oil involved, usually medicated, but doing massages with oil, sweat therapy, certain, concentrated oil pooling in certain areas of the body to help target certain conditions. We've got, you may have seen in pictures or heard of the oil pooling on the third eye and a constant stream. It's really good for stress and anxiety, and especially the Vata dominant type of balance or imbalance. And then, of course, the ultimate cleansing sort of detox purge is known as panchakarma. So 5 different stages of that treatment. But again, it's guided by a physician, and you shouldn't just, willy-nilly try that out, because it can be quite an interesting experience. But yeah, that's kind of overarching, kind of how it is. So.
I think that's a great explanation to really show people all the different modalities and how it touches all different areas of life too. And in the end, it comes down to balance, keeping everything balanced and balancing that excess and deficiencies too. So, jumping into the next question, I think this is a great question to answer, because you see like little tests in magazines or other things that say find your dosha or figure out this, and I think a lot of people can be confused on what is a dosha and how do you come up with that when you see patients. Like, what are some generalities, and can they change over time? So tell our viewers more about what exactly is a dosha and how can they figure it out.
Right. So yeah, that's a great question, and one that actually a lot of patients of mine are like, oh, so what am I? And as we just sit down, it's like, well, so yeah, there are lots of questionnaires online, and a lot of them, if you have gone through one, there's one question, and for example, it'll be like, what, do you prefer hot, cold, or room temperature water? And so we like to ask these sorts of questions to help us understand, the certain characteristics that would define a certain dosha. And so a dosha is something that helps us to identify and define, in a sense, who you are. And who you are, not from just a physical standpoint, but also your mental, emotional realm and personality, and just kind of who you are. It's something that, in a sense, is kind of like your blueprint. It's your framework. It's what makes you up and makes you you. It is something that is determined at the time of actually conception, so way before we even come into this world as beings. But once that happens, we're kind of set with what sorts of things we will be prone to in life. So certain disease conditions or ailments that we'll be more likely to have or come across, kind of like our, even our body structure, metabolism. And so it's just a way of defining our psychophysiological responses. And then in the disease state, it helps to tell us about certain diseases too. So certain diseases under certain dosha categories as well. For instance, we've got our top 3 doshas, and how are those formed? There's a whole science behind it. The first is known as Vata, and that's the principle of movement. So you think of air, you think of space, ether, as the 2 primary elements that help to form Vata. And, this is present in all of us, just as the other 2 are present in us. But certain people will be more dominant in 1 or 2, most often 2. And it usually lingers there, but isn't as defined. So for somebody like me, for example, I am dominant in Vata primarily. And then secondly, I have some pitta in me. And so for me, in a very balanced state, I would be somebody that would be quite grounded, wouldn't be as anxious, because in an imbalanced state, there would be things like anxiety, or ruminating thoughts, or having a hard time gaining weight, or just really frail and weak. Those types of things, and so the second dosha, pitta, it's more about the concept of transformation. Fire, water, are the two elements that make it up. And it's more about, kind of that getting things done. And the people that are very dominant in this type of constitution are kind of your type A personality figures, business oriented. In a way, they could be very cutthroat, temperamental. Anger could be quick as an emotion for them, but also very goal-oriented in a very balanced state. The third type is kapha, and so this is more on the principle of structure and, in a sense, lubrication for our body internally. So when you think of this one, it's more on the principle of water and earth. And in a very healthy state, it's more about grounding. It's about kind of laying your framework for any sort of building structure. And I like to think of this or describe this dosha as kind of your 70-year-old plump grandma who's very nurturing and loving, and and so just kind of your very loving individuals. But those types of individuals are very prone to conditions like diabetes, and so let's kind of, compare contrast. But like I said, we each are all three, but two usually are the most dominant, and it helps to define who we are, and what qualities are more pertinent and present in all of us. So if I were to go through each, again, the vata type, it's about movement. And so you would think of qualities like lightness, dryness could be one, feeling cold, maybe there's roughness, it's very subtle, there's and clearness. Whereas the pitta is more about heat, so hot, being sharp. There is some lightness to it too, but then also very spreading and oily in that sense. And then the kapha type, while it's also oily, it's more about heaviness, and being smooth or dense or soft, and can be cloudy as well, or sticky in a sense. But yeah, that's kind of a very overall sort of intro to it. But yeah.
That was great. So, okay, so all of us can be one or two, or technically we're all three of them all the time. It just, so would you say there's like a dominant and then like a secondary one, or could it be equal to it?
Right.
Tell me more about that part too. Can they be two at the same time, like at the same level, or is it always one dominating?
Right. There's usually always one that dominates.
Okay.
And how do we find that out? Because a lot of times there's a questionnaire that we'll go through, or you will do online, and it's like, well, I think I'm both or equal in two. And I think the way that we can differentiate between the two is by taking it a step further and actually doing more of an assessment that doesn't just involve questioning, and doing a physical exam and taking a look at somebody's pulse, taking a look at their tongue helps us to identify, hey, is this person more vata are they more pitta or kapha? Just like in Chinese medicine, the pulse is quite useful in terms of not only telling us what is your blueprint, so what is that constitution that you were born with, but then also telling us about where the imbalance lies in that moment in time. And so, sure, if you've just eaten lunch or eaten a meal or had something to drink, it can throw your current state of being off. But generally it will tell us, this person is more dominant in vata and they're having an imbalance in vata. And that's where the question comes into play of, say it's like 2 o'clock and they've come in and they've had a late lunch, maybe they grabbed a coffee, and there's more of there's some vata in there, but then there's also some pitta. And so it will help to, differentiate between the two. So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So it always goes back to balance too, and keeping that is where they are and how things change too. So, when you think about doing treatments, is the dosha one of the main things that you focus on, or do you take this and then it's just one component of many when you look at the body?
Right. So, definitely it's a huge component because it does come back to that primary principle of balancing that individual out, right? So no matter if I have a patient that comes in with diabetes or high blood pressure, for instance, that is not something that defines who they are. It's just a diagnosis. It's not the individual. And so what I do is I take a look at the individual, and it's more about seeing who this person is, as opposed to, oh, this is the condition and this is the person. So we always look at the individual first and where they are, and then we treat them according to their imbalance so that we can bring them back to where they need to be. And lo and behold, we usually find that, certain conditions like diabetes, blood pressure, cancer even, they come down to where they need to be, and they don't have that sort of disease process present. So, yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'll jump on to the next question, because there's so many great things we can talk about with Ayurveda and the herbs and everything that goes with it. So
right.
I want to ask you about the 6 tastes. So what are they? Why are they important to Ayurvedic medicine?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we talk quite a bit about is food. And food is medicine. I'm sure we've all heard this in some form or another. But food helps us to balance out our imbalances. But then on the other end, they can also cause imbalance for us. So, for example, a very fiery, anger-prone, pitta-dominant individual should not be having spicy food all the time. Spice, heat, more heat would cause more heat in the body, more anger. Spicy is one of the tastes. I know you asked me that first question was, what are the 6 tastes? I jumped ahead, sorry. We've got sweet, salty, sour, pungent, bitter, and astringent as the top 6 tastes. And so as a collective, every meal should have each taste because that would help to identify a balanced meal. Now, for somebody, like I just mentioned, who is the dominant, they should not be having spicy foods, maybe even not so hot as in temperature, because that would then create more of a pitta imbalance. So a pitta type should be having more of cooling foods, maybe astringent, maybe a bit of bitterness in their food, because we don't want those pungent qualities to help increase that pitta. Similarly, with a vata dominant individual, spicy will actually increase, the pungent taste will actually increase the vata individual, but since Vata is more prone to cool or coldness, it will help to balance the Vata dominant individual. So it's a way of using food to help balance a certain dosha quality that we're trying to bring back into balance. So going into the fall season here in Seattle, there's a lot of, especially the weather still changing. And so we're going from our mediocre summer to a very wet, it's been a little windy too, fall, and kind of gloomy as well. So it's a time when there's movement out in our environment. It's very easy for something like the Vata dosha to become out of balance. And so we want to focus on things that will help stabilize that. And food is one way. So, fall time comes around and I think a lot of us go towards things that are soupy or warm or baked, because then it's a natural way to help balance that out. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very relatable concept for most all of us out here. So yeah, that's one way of treating, but it's a very basic and fundamental aspect of treatment. So,
right. I think just Indian foods and Ayurvedic medicine and spices, there's so much you can do, and it's inspiring to put together combinations and balance it that way. I think that's incredibly powerful, and that's definitely a fun tool for you.
Right. Yeah.
Patients too.
Oh, for sure. I think a lot of my patients end up converting to, eating more Indian food, but it's great. It's great. So, yeah.
So much healing power there.
Yeah.
So I'll jump on to the next question, which talks more about your background too. Mm-hmm. So you have a very interesting background in the fact that you're a naturopathic physician, and you've studied very extensively in Ayurveda too, and you have a master's in Ayurvedic medicine. And both of these medicines are about nature and the body's innate intelligence and ability to heal. So in your practice, and you've touched on this a little bit throughout too, is how do you blend them together with each patient?
Yeah. So I get this question a lot, especially when patients call in to make an appointment and they're like, oh, I want an Ayurvedic consultation. I want to figure out what my dosha is. I want to know how to treat myself from an Ayurvedic perspective. And it's, I always tell them it's hard for me to separate the two, because it's, when I'm looking at an individual or they're in front of me and I'm talking with them or I'm doing my exam, it's difficult for me to separate the two out, because I feel that naturopathic medicine and both Ayurveda, they take a lens of whole body approach and very individualized treatment. And so when I was going through naturopathic medicine school, I felt that, there was a piece that was missing that could help me in terms of further individualizing treatment and helping to understand who it was exactly that was sitting in front of me. And so I think what Ayurveda has done for me is helped me achieve exactly that. And by listening to their pulses, by looking at their tongue, having them stick their tongue out at me, that's always fun. But it helps for me to go a step further and understand who this person is from every aspect, whether it's mental, emotional, physical. And oftentimes when I'm listening to a pulse, I'll ask 90% of the time, it's a very, psychological, mental, emotional sort of question. It's like, oh, do you ruminate a lot? Or, oh, are you quick to anger? Or are you, and I would get this funny look, like, oh, did you get that from my pulse? Like, and yeah, there are we've got certain levels that will help tell us about the mental, emotional aspect of an individual. And, but it helps me to understand who's in front of me and then help to individualize my treatment plan for them, because we can't just say, you know, oh, an individual has come in with hypertension, let's give them this lifestyle, let's give them these herbs, you know, and send them on their way. So, you know, I think that there's more that Ayurveda helps me to understand for myself and for patients, and then help be their coach in terms of not, you know, not just helping them identify what's wrong, but identify why it's wrong, and help them redirect their treatment and their lifestyle to better serve them.
Yeah, I think that's great. And being able to feel them and read them on an emotional level too, I think is so helpful. Knowing what they're capable of or what they can do for their health too, or seeing what their personality and their lifestyle is and adapting to that. Because I was thinking that is the hardest part is, yes, you want 9 billion things for them, but then reading their emotions through their body, through all these other things kind of gives you that extra tool to be able to really individualize the treatment and make sure that it's going to be successful for them. They're going to actually do it.
Right, right. Absolutely. And, you know, I do tell every one of my patients, and, you know, I could sit here in this chair and I could say all these wonderful things about what you should be doing and how you can change for the better for yourself. But I think it really takes on a patient's end, you know, their willingness to understand and want to understand what's going on so that they can make the changes for themselves. And I think when I'm able to have that conversation with them and help them understand who, you know, what's going on and why it's happening, I feel like people are more ready to make those changes and, you know, understand their body better. You know, which is huge. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I have a question for you too about how do you integrate Ayurveda into your life, like on a daily basis, on a general basis? How do you use it? How do you use the medicine for yourself?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. You know, I feel like to be a healer, and especially, you know, no matter what realm or what type of healer you are, you have to practice what you preach, right? And I grew up in an East Indian household. Rarely ever went to a physician, and you know, we learned from a young age about what healthy eating was and how to eat, you know, for ourselves, and you know, using certain herbs, certain spices, you know, doing that type of thing. So food has always been there for me. But then also a daily routine is very essential. You know, as I mentioned, I'm a very Vata dominant individual. And so for me, routine is very good because it helps keep me grounded. You know, and so going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, and then having certain time for myself in the morning for whether that be meditation, yoga practice, breathing practice, kind of helps me to set my day, you know, and keep me grounded throughout the day, so that I can be present for not only myself, but for my patients and whatever else I'm doing that day. But, you know, just that would be how I would do it. You know, it's not about, you know, I think it's more of a lifestyle. It's not like, oh, you know, I've got to take this thing or I have to do this thing on this day. It's more about adapting something that works for you. And I think that's the beauty with Ayurveda. It's that, you know, we work with individuals so that they can do things on a daily basis that is good for their health. Yeah, you know, and it's going to help them in the long run as opposed to waiting until something happens or just letting, you know, go and not necessarily listen to what's going on with their body or what their body is telling them. Of course, I do take some herbs too, and vitamins. But it's I think the huge piece is with lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
lifestyle, tuning into your body, prevention, which is
right. Huge. Yeah.
And I think that's great that your upbringing too, like you were taught that from such a young age and having it integrated. I think that's really beautiful. And that's a great, amazing way to start too.
Right. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. It's been wonderful to be able to integrate what I grew up with into what I do now for a living. I think it's a gift. I feel that I am able to offer, and feel proud to do so. So
definitely. So to our viewers right now, if they want to learn more about Ayurveda, or if they just want to try to integrate it into their life, like at a very basic level, just experiment with it a little bit, what would you advise them to do? Like whether it's, trying a different spice, different foods, breathing, reading a book, what would you tell our viewers of like a way to get closer to Ayurvedic medicine?
Sure. So there are actually quite a lot of resources out there now. If you search into Google, I'm sure you would find a few websites that would pop up. But there is actually, here in the US, we have Dr. Lad, L-A-D, and he's got an Ayurvedic Institute not too far from here. But he actually has written a ton of books and has online resources, and he's made it very, he's blended it nicely, for the Western mind, which is nice too, especially when you're first diving into this whole realm. So that's a great resource. Let's see, we've got a few companies out there also, as far as, if you're wanting to try certain herbs out, and you're not sure about sourcing, because that's something to be mindful about also. You want to get the right product, and make sure that it's safe. So a couple of them to mention. One is actually local here. It's Ayush. Also goes by the name of the letter R, U, and then VED, Ayurveda. Great products, great physicians. And I've actually visited their farms in India. So that was amazing.
Very nice.
Yeah. And so I would definitely, go there. Herbs, and or there's also Bunyan Botanicals. They do a lot of loose herb powders, and you can find them online. But they also have blogs and articles that they have on their website. It's a great resource also. But if you're just wanting to try and maybe you don't want to go research or read a book, I would suggest, especially since we're moving into the fall season, making sure that you have a good bedtime. So 10 a.m. is a good bedtime, and waking up before 6 is ideal. And especially with the weather changing, it's a great way to help ensure that your quality of sleep isn't being compromised. Or maybe it is, and to bed at the proper time may help that also. And certain foods. So again, focusing on foods that will be more nourishing, grounding, warming, and maybe even a little oily. I don't mean by deep fried foods, but good oils that would help to nourish and ground and lubricate our body. A lot of times arthritis flares occur during this time of year, with the change in weather and the windiness and cold, wetness, but focusing on those types of foods are very beneficial. So, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
I know it's definitely that cozy time of year too, where you want to eat soups and you want cozy, warm food.
Right.
It's definitely that. So tell us too, I mean, I think all these sources are great because it's all about quality and finding the right sources. And with you, tell us how we can find you. And also, do you do telemedicine? Do you do consults from afar, or is it just locally in Seattle? At this time, I'm interested in that because you have such an amazing background, like with the sciences and with naturopathic medicine and medical school and Ayurveda. I think it's a very unique and very foundational background for Ayurveda. So I think you're an amazing resource for our customers to learn more. So tell us more about, if you do telemedicine, where you're located and how we can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I do telemedicine for sure. And I use an EMR system that allows for that. So I'm able to connect with anybody as long as they have an internet connection. So the easiest way to find me would be through my website, which is just wellnessrxdefined.com. And or my phone number, which you could call or text that line. It's 206-486-0660. And you could also email me at contact@wellnessrxdefined.com. And I've also got a social media presence on Instagram, just with the name of the clinic, Wellness RX Defined, and or my doctor page, which is DR, and then my first name, last name, Priya Walia. I'm always happy to work with individuals, no matter what they're wanting, whether it's just, a quick little introduction or they want to put their feelers there. I do free consults, to help them kind of figure out if they want to dive deeper or they want to take a break and they're not quite ready yet. It's totally fine too. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, we covered so many topics, from the philosophy behind it and the doshas and how you kind of go into all of them, to the 6 tastes, to keeping the balance between all of that, and how you integrate in naturopathic medicine. So lots of great topics today. Very educational, very inspiring too. I feel like I want to go out and make Indian food and incorporate different spices right now.
Yeah. Wish you were closer. Could have done it together.
I know. It'd be fun. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think you're an amazing resource for our customers if they want to learn more too. And have an amazing weekend, because it's your Friday over there, going into the weekend in Seattle. Hopefully the weather is good. Or goodish for fall. It's cozy. Yeah. It's a cozy.
It's cozy, right? Yeah. Well, thank you so much for thinking of me and allowing me to be present and opening up that door for your customers. I think that's huge. Especially since we're trying to spread the word with a lot of natural healing methods, and I think Ayurveda is right up there, and it's gaining more in popularity, which is amazing. But I'm definitely all for education, and I think that's how we're gonna learn and spread everything out and be healthy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And giving high quality, good educational sources. I think that's number one too. Really giving them the education. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. And I'm sure we'll be in contact soon, and have an amazing weekend too.
Yes, you as well. Take care. Hope you feel better.
Bye. Bye.